Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Asian American for Equality's virtual gala, our 48th annual Lunar New Year celebration. I'm Thomas Yu with Jennifer Sun. Together, we serve as Affy's co-executive directors, and this evening we'll be your hosts. On behalf of Affy's board of directors and staff, we wish you a happy year of the tiger. While we would love to be celebrating with you in person tonight, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather online with you, our friends, funders, and community partners, and acknowledge all we have accomplished together.
Our theme this year is Advancing Equity in Community Care. Throughout the evening, we'll be hearing from Affy frontline staff, volunteers, tenants, and partners in the community who are working tirelessly to help our most vulnerable community members. We appreciate all of our 2022 Affy Gala sponsors. We'll be acknowledging them throughout the program. As you watch this evening, we invite you to support our mission. You can do that by texting AAFE to 44321 or scanning the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Preserving and creating affordable housing is, of course, a bedrock of Affy's community development mission. Here's more on our work in the past year to address New York City's housing crisis.
I grew up in the late 70s and 80s in Chinatown. My parents still live in the building that I grew up in. I grew up in an apartment that had 2 small bedrooms, but it was always multiple families. I was living with my 2 aunts, my uncle, and my grandparents, my sister and I, and also my parents in a tiny 2-bedroom, which we had bunk beds in the living room, bunk beds in both bedrooms. At any given moment, we had about a dozen people living in our apartment. So there's always a need for affordable housing.
Affy's housing is really meant to be a bedrock for our low-income immigrant communities to have a safe and secure place to live, to grow, to nurture their families so that they can advance, achieve economic mobility, and achieve the American dream. We have developed over 1,200 units of affordable housing, and it ranges from very low income housing for people transferring out of homeless facilities because they have housing instability, to low income housing, all the way to middle and moderate income housing for working class families. In a few months, we'll be welcoming the first tenants into our East Village Homes affordable housing project. Really, that project is important because it reflects the makeup of that East Village area. We're building homes that look like the neighborhood, and that we ought to cover folks that are unseen sometimes while making sure there are homes for everyone. And so those projects are so important to maintain the character of our neighborhoods.
This is a new construction, 45 units inclusive of 1 supers unit. There will be 8 set-asides for the formerly homeless. So for the 36 units that are available, so far to date, we've received over 32,000 applications. So that also highlights a huge need for the area, for the neighborhood, and for this community for affordable housing. So the other project that we are working on in this area, it's called Lower East Side Ancp. Because this is a co-op, the tenants here can start building generational wealth. They can own a piece of New York, they can own a piece of something, their own homes for themselves, and pass it on to future generation. A lot of these city-owned sites are also tenement buildings, century-old tenement buildings, walk-ups, and in disrepair. So for those buildings, we're actually doing significant rehab. For tenants who are living there, they will have to be temporarily relocated into apartments. We find apartments near their communities so they are not relocated too far from their schools or from their jobs and from the communities that they're familiar with.
So we lived on 10th Street, Lower East Side, and we've been there for around 30 years. It was not the greatest condition. It was like a hazard for Grandma. Like the meetings, they kept telling us like, oh, like this building is gonna be redone, it's gonna be redone. And like when I was younger, I would just be like, okay, like, you know, it's gonna happen eventually. And some of my family members were like, oh yeah, but like, you know, like it's an old government building. Like, I don't know if this is gonna like be this and that. So Grandma kind of lost hope on that idea. It was just overwhelming, like ridiculously overwhelming, but you guys made it super simple, absolutely accommodating. You guys were super like generous in listening to Grandma and, you know, giving us hope.
多謝評鑑會各位同事，thank you。
Even during the height of the pandemic, when we had the strictest shelter-in-place protocols, our staff was out there putting themselves in danger just to keep our building safe, making sure that those who did not have food and were at risk of hunger had food on their tables through our food pantries. These were some of the things that we did for the last 2 years nonstop and are still doing today to make sure our communities stay alive. And everything we do is really for that end.
They need to regrouting, caulking, change the shower head, and if the faucet is damaged or broken, need to replace it.
I do leasing and some of the tenant income certifications for all our tenants. Everything from translations is like, you know, they need repairs in their apartments and they need to explain what needs to be addressed, so I can translate for anybody in the company.
I'm the person in charge for anything. It has to be when collect rent and Section 8 also subsidies. Customer service is like when the tenants like coming to you and they need help in case they have to renew leases, they have to renew subsidies.
For-profit organizations, throughout my career, it's always been about the bottom line, which I understand. I get that. People was always, you know, second or third on the line, to be quite honest with you. Not here, not here. Surprisingly and refreshingly, people come first. This whole organization cares more about people than any organization I've ever been a part of. It's all about, you know, it's people and their needs and their concerns and their shelter and their home life, their quality of life comes first above everything else.
We are planning to develop a 90-unit family with children purpose-built transitional housing facility. And this is extremely important because this is a way and a path for these families with children to get back on their feet.
Some people assume that when they think of someone who has housing instability, it is the person that's sleeping on the sidewalk or they're huddling on a bench in a public park. A lot of people, for example, are overcrowded in apartments that may be already housing 2 to 3 families, and they just need more space for their family to grow. They might not have a lease with the current landlord and they're paying cash month to month and it's not secure enough for their family. Or sometimes they are recovering from a disaster, a flood in the basement that they lived in, a fire in their building.
Out of that need, we believe that there is a strong purpose for building transitional housing that can really fill a gap in the types of housing that's currently available in Flushing, to provide a pathway for families with children to be able to get the housing assistance, apply for housing vouchers, rental subsidies, and receive the support in finding landlords who will rent an affordable apartment for them. And through that assistance, be able to find permanent affordable housing for their families to be permanent residents in the neighborhood.
I chose to work at a nonprofit because I believe in Affy's mission. Someone gave me, my family, a chance to make it in this community. Someone gave me a chance, and I believe that everyone deserves a chance. Everyone in this community deserves a chance to survive and thrive.
I'm here today with Lydia Tom, the board chair and one of the founders of Affy, to really talk about Affy's development as a community builder. After really having a forceful experience of organizing for employment rights and as a tenant organizer, why the evolution into becoming a community builder?
So the origins of Affy were to really provide a voice and speak for the community that had been marginalized and been silenced and been disinvested in. And for many years, people tall in this community, isolated in this community, but also grew in this community, but weren't getting a fair share of resources. And whether it's construction jobs on the most publicly supported housing development ever in Chinatown, not having job opportunities for people from the community, or looking at service needs of residents in the community not being served. Year after year, every winter, there's a lot of fires in Chinatown. We have old low tenements that are just fire traps, and when heat and hot water aren't provided adequately, they tend to be fires in these properties, and very often the families are displaced. Red Cross may come in, but there's nothing in the community, a place for these people in the community to be able to transition to an interim before the properties get improved. And very often some of the owners don't even have an interest. They are welcoming an opportunity. They have a vacant property that they can then turn to market rate housing. And over the years, we've realized that it's not enough to advocate, that we also need to begin to provide for the community. And there was no one building affordable housing in Chinatown. We said we need to learn how to do this for ourselves. And other communities across the country are similarly looking at becoming community builders, not relying on others, whether it's the private sector or the public sector, to take on these responsibilities. And so we didn't know a whole lot about housing development. We said, we can learn this. It took a lot of effort, but I think it was rewarding to see that we could do it, but also it gave us a reality about how hard it is to put something like this together. We were able successfully to get some city-owned properties that were vacant and get as much finance as we could from the state. We want to do permanent affordable housing, but we have seniors and they have needs. How can we provide housing for the seniors here? And we said, okay, there are families that are dislocated by fires and things like that. Can we provide transitional housing or housing for formerly homeless? And so we got finance from different sources to try to make this one project an ideal project, where the reality is there's different streams of funding for each kind of effort you want to put into the kind of housing that you want to build.
And so it seems, even though you're not able to realize putting all of those different uses into one single development, where we are today is maybe thinking about within our community, providing those different types of housing in the community, right? So that you have permanent affordable housing, but then we also have other facilities that provide transitional housing for families that are displaced. Can you talk a little bit more about why that type of housing is still needed today?
When you think a lot of the people who end up being homeless were the single individuals or families, they tend to be people living in communities that don't have the best quality housing. And they tend to live in private housing or on the margins of not being able to pay rent. And very often people want to stay in their own communities, and particularly when we had these fires, people were very hesitant to go to the hotels the Red Cross would provide them, whether it's Midtown and another borough. They were used to coming to this community, shopping in this community, having the kids go to school here, and being able to access their jobs here. It's important that we provide opportunities for a spectrum of housing in the communities where people are living.
And Lydia, in your role at Enterprise, I think you've seen lots of examples of how important integrating resident services into affordable housing can make an even deeper impact in the lives of people who live in affordable housing. Can you talk about why resident service integration and providing wraparound services to people who live in affordable housing is important and the impact that it can have in people's lives?
All the folks that Affy serves, and you can speak more closely to this since you're on the ground, is that people have individual needs. Families have different household needs. You might have seniors, you might have children, you might have people with mental illness and need support. And people are afraid to even ask for this kind of assistance, or they may need help with rental assistance. With COVID, there were people who were losing their jobs or made to work part-time, and they couldn't make their rents. And so it's not enough to just say we need our rents to run the building. We also have to put a hand out and say, what can we do to help you? What are your needs, and how can we support you? It'd be great for you to expound now on what Affy is doing about some of the services that we're doing.
The pandemic really, I think, provided an important opportunity for us to really integrate property management at Affy and community services at Affy together. And during the pandemic, the property management team and the community services team came together to really help connect families to food, to medication, to rental assistance. And even though the pandemic is starting to sort of fade, what we're finding is still we have more and more formerly homeless families being placed in our housing, and that helping them address their rent arrears, their financial stability is only the beginning. Oftentimes there are other sort of root causes or issues that they're struggling with that contribute to their financial instability. And so we're finding already that, by bringing these two teams together, they're more effectively helping to address some deeper problems that families are facing. Yeah, so thanks, Lydia, for really helping us connect Affy's history to the work that we're doing in the present, and really helping us understand both the need for us to continue to build different forms of housing to really meet the urgent needs of low-income families in our community, and why this work is so important today.
Well, it's rewarding seeing the spectrum of work that Affy is doing and making such a difference in all the communities that we're trying to make a difference in. So thank you for your work.
Thanks.
Affy's affordable housing, community services, and small business services would obviously not be possible if it wasn't for the steadfast support of our elected officials and so many partners at every level of government. We are grateful to them, and also to NeighborWorks America, which provides crucial funding to Affy, but also board and staff training and access to essential resources. Also, from all of us at Affy, our heartfelt thanks to this evening's sponsors, including presenting sponsors, New York Community Bank and Con Edison, our champion sponsors, BNY Mellon, Morgan Stanley, Valley Bank, AAD Construction, Goldman Sachs, and M&T Bank.
We'd also like to thank patron-level sponsors Benchmark Title, Cathay Bank, Edison Properties, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Goldstein Hall, and Monadnock Development. And also our supporting sponsors, Enterprise Community Partners, the Law Office of Stephen T.G., Low Income Investment Fund, UAI, Curly Herkin and Johnswood LLP, and Howard Hughes. Also, it's not too late for you to contribute. You can support our mission by texting AAFE to 44321 or scanning the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Throughout the pandemic, Affy has mobilized to serve our community through 3 newly established food pantries and other emergency aid programs. We couldn't have done it without a mighty team of volunteers. Let's take a look. Affy Community Services is the heart and soul of the organization. Through our community service offices in Chinatown, Jackson Heights, and Flushing, we touch the lives of over 10,000 low-income families, immigrant families in New York City. Over the pandemic, our organization's ability to provide social safety net has been more critical than ever. And so there have been many families that we've heard through providing emergency cash assistance of losing loved ones and therefore losing the ability to support their families and putting food on the table and be able to maintain safe housing. And so Affy has had to respond by really standing up a number of food pantry programs.
I would say particularly for our seniors who are on a fixed income, they do rely on pantries. Now that they have access to food they actually eat, their reaction is amazing. They're always so surprised. It's food that they recognize, and that they're extremely appreciative of. We are providing at our pantry 3 types of Chinese greens. They are different each month because we ask for what's seasonal. We also provide chicken directly from the markets in Chinatown. We started to get really great, amazing people to volunteer who were part of organizations, who were part of the neighborhood. In some respects, they were like our own tenants. Not only do many of our volunteers come from the communities we serve, but also have a deep knowledge and connection with other community members.
Volunteers are everything. Especially the work as we do is we want to scale it up and help more and more people. A lot of the time the constraint is just how many people we have on board. So volunteers really make the food pantries happen in an orderly and really effective manner.
Since the pandemic started and then we got laid off. When I was at home for the whole year, I found out it's no good. So I tried to find a volunteer job. So I'm lucky I have a chance. They sent me the flyer, say, oh, do you want to do volunteer? I said, okay.
I like the idea that they have volunteer for the elderly here, especially the pantries, especially during this past couple of years with the pandemic and the Asian Americans, especially elderly, are under-resourced through decades here, and I thought this was a great opportunity to give back to the community.
Oh yeah, I really love giving back to underserved communities. I really enjoy that too. I'm pretty fortunate myself, and others are not, so I try and do my best to help them out when I can.
I started volunteering with Affy about a month ago. This is, I think, my 3rd time, and I try and make it to as many dates as I can fit into my schedule. Volunteering for something that I have a place in the community means a lot more to me and is different because I never had those interactions when I was a kid.
Our food pantry program has expanded outside of Affy's traditional footprint to serve neighborhoods like East Harlem that were a direct response to anti-Asian attacks that happened in that neighborhood. We thought it was important to find a way for our organization to reach the growing population of Asian seniors and families living in East Harlem.
It's been great. The seniors in that neighborhood has been super responsive. They've even come out and participated in helping in these food distributions, purely because up in East Harlem there is no access to Asian groceries, and that's kind of the need that Affy wanted to address in that neighborhood. And month to month, even no matter how cold the weather is, the seniors always come out to pick up their groceries. And just through speaking with them, many of them have to take the train all the way from East Harlem down to Chinatown once a week or twice a week to grab their groceries and lug it all the way back to East Harlem.
During the pandemic, we realized very quickly that there was a need for us to integrate our property management services and our community services together to really focus on providing direct support for the thousands of residents who live in Affy affordable housing. That there was a need for our staff to play an active role in connecting residents to food, prescriptions, healthcare, and other basic services.
We want our tenants to really thrive. Out of our residential services, we have sort of repurposed our 111 Norfolk location to be a community resource center. And out of that center, is where we are able to provide case management, but a whole host of wellness opportunities and workshops. We recently launched this space where we're providing yoga, mental health, acupuncture, self-defense. Our staff reflect the community that we serve. Yes, there are Asians that we serve, but we serve a huge Latinx population in the Lower East Side, also in Jackson Heights. And we are also supporting and serving now the Nepali community that's in Jackson Heights.
With the pandemic, you hear a lot of really sad stories of people that have lived in communities for a really long time getting evicted because, you know, just misfortune after misfortune piling on due to some crazy scenario. And to know that I can help a little bit, help people at least feel better about staying in their homes, to help people either find them or help pay for their rent is really good, because it's really hard to worry day in and day out whether or not you're going to be able to stay in your home, and to help relieve some of that burden it's very nice.
Thank you so much to our volunteers. In just a few months, Affy's affiliate, Renaissance Economic Development Corporation, will be celebrating its 25th anniversary. Every year, Renaissance provides crucial funding and support for hundreds of small businesses. Tonight, we would like you to meet one of our small business owners, Lilly Ng, who grew up in Chinatown and has become an inspiration to us and the community.
Our best seller is our gluten-free chicken legs.
My name is Lilly. I'm from Meiwa. We're also known as Lily's Vegan Pantry, and we've been here since 1995. It's a family-owned business. My mom, Lee Mei Ng, she used to be the owner. I was born and raised in Chinatown. PS 130 was my elementary school, and we actually owned a restaurant across from PS 130. So basically, this is my neighborhood growing up. Every year we will go back to Taiwan. In Taiwan, you have all these mock chicken, mock beef, mock duck, mock seafood that you've never seen anything here. So when my mom told me that, you know, our temple in Taiwan wants us to do this business, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I think I was only 10. I was like, yeah, let's try this. I was like, I don't know much about it, but if you're gonna do it, then obviously I will help you. And we thought that it's definitely a great experience because we do want people to eat more vegetarian food. We do want to stop animal cruelty. So we decided to take the opportunity, take the chance, and just do it. But like for the first couple of years, I remember vividly for the first 3 years, it was just very, very tough. So we have products come in, nobody knew what it was. It was just a very emotional part of our journey. After we became a household name, we started getting more recognition for our products, and that's where people started to know more and more about the quality products at Meiwa. When vegan took over, the vegan trend took over, we decided that this promotes our purpose even more. So we decided to create new vegan products. And that's when people noticed our company, that we're being very truthful with them, even though that means losing a part of our best business.
For Lily's Vegan Pantry, we know they were one of the first 100% vegan retail shops that opened in New York City. They were really a trailblazer. Lilly, who is the 100% owner of the business, is a woman-owned entrepreneur. She came to us about 3 years ago. She wanted to expand her business beyond her retail store in Chinatown, New York City. We believed her story. We believed in her capacity, and so we gave her a loan to expand her wholesale distribution. And today, she is selling across the United States.
I believe Susan and Simon came over to our store one day and introduced themselves and said, you know, we're from Renaissance and we work with a lot of small businesses, and we provide help, we provide advice, we provide loans if you guys are interested. And I definitely was interested. We needed a loan for our expansion of our store because we wanted to expand our retail shop more. We wanted to modernize our store more, as in like we wanted to get new fridges, we wanted to get more storage so we can be prepared for future businesses. And from what I feel from a bank, it's not as personal, it's not as friendly. Everything is very business orientated, but like if you go to a place like Renaissance, they're friendly people who just really wants to help you. During the pandemic, it was very difficult time for us. Because we're a retail supermarket, we were able to stay open, but many of our staffs, including myself, really risked everything to come to work.
Since the pandemic, it's been very busy for Renaissance because there was a lot of small business owners who needed our assistance during the pandemic. And we were providing emergency loans, PPP loans, technical assistance, and even grants. In total, last year, just 2021, we provided $6 million of funding to small business owners to help them survive through this pandemic. That helped save over 400 jobs in our community.
I would definitely recommend Renaissance because all the people there are really truly trying to find a better solution, better help, better way to help you with your business. So definitely Renaissance was there for us when we need them. And sometimes business owners just need like a helpful guide. And I think that's what Renaissance is.
In our community, housing instability and poverty are facts of life, but very often they're hidden from public view. During the past 2 years, the pandemic has focused more attention on the issues facing the low-income Asian American and Pacific Islander community.
At Affy, the challenges faced by individuals and families living on the edge of homelessness are far from invisible. We see the impact in our community every day. Here's a closer look at their needs.
When I was a very young child, our family experienced homelessness. It was not something that was our fault. It happened because there was a fire in the neighborhood and it burned down a lot of the homes that we lived in. In seeking help, we found that we felt very alone a lot of the times. It seemed that if there was no one willing to help us, and that being unhoused meant that suddenly we were outcasts from society, when in fact my parents were still working, we were going to school, and we just needed a place to call home. And if it wasn't for this just one person finally coming out and really helping us within a government agency and really helping us see the process all the way through to get us a home, we wouldn't be where we are today, and I wouldn't be where I am today. And knowing that there are many others in our communities who face this, we have a moral obligation to really help them and come back to being productive and safe and secure, households in our society. This is the only way we can all advance together.
So the pandemic has had a devastating economic impact in our Asian immigrant communities. So many of them have lost employment, especially because many of them worked in the very industries that have been most adversely impacted, not only by the pandemic, but also by the shelter-in-place mandates that followed. We're finding that a lot of our clients are struggling to be able to find work and to find the income to be able to afford affordable housing. So what we're seeing is a widespread situation of a lot of Asian immigrant families even more precariously living in housing situations that are not permanent. They are living in SROs. They are renting rooms or even beds in bunk bed situations because they cannot afford permanent housing. They're relying on being able to stay with their families temporarily or with unrelated adults in roommate situations as a way of having temporary shelter.
예, 후로싱 지역에는 이제 홈리스들이 눈에 띄는 분들은 이제 저는 한인이어서 그런지 이제 한인이나 또 중국인 그리고 뭐 대만인 그런 분들이 이제 주로 이제 아시아권 있는 분들이 눈에 띄게 됩니다. 이제 이런 분들이 있게 되면 이곳에 쉘터에 오지 않겠느냐 이제 질문도 하기도 하고.
제가 2017년입니다. 2017년 그때 엘머스트에 살고 있었는데요. 도저히 방을 얻어서 이리로 이사 왔는데 돈이 안 됩니다. 방을 얻을 만한 돈이 안 돼가지고 저는 나눔의 집이 있었는지도 몰랐습니다. 그때 당시엔 몰랐는데 지나가는 사람한테 내가 그런 사정을 얘기했더니 자기가 알려주겠다고 주소를 줬습니다. 그 주소를 줘가지고 들어온 게 여기입니다. 네.
제가 오고 나서 사람이 분위기가 바뀌면 잠을 못 자지 않습니까? 여러 가지로. 또 저 개인적으로 참 이 생각 저 생각 그럼 잠을 못 자야 되는데 처음 이사 온 날 지난 일요일 날 이사했습니다. 이사 온 날 잠자리에 누웠는데 그냥 잠이 들었습니다. 그래서 눈을 번쩍 뜨니까 한 2-3시간 잔 것 같아요. 그런데 몸이 날아갈 정도로 개운했습니다. 그래서 제가 이사하기 전에는 잠을 거의 못 잤습니다. 이 생각 저 생각 살아야 되나 죽어야 되나 해가지고.
우리가 이제 리스도 끝나서 이사를 해야 됩니다. 그래서 이사를 하려면 우리가 더 좋은 이제 그런 20-30명이 머물 수 있는 쉘터가 필요합니다. 현재 여기는 화장실이 2개밖에 없습니다. 그래서 이게 식사를 하고 나서는 굉장히 고통스럽습니다. 또 우리 안에 들어와 있던 분들 가운데서도 이제 패밀리가 있는데 미스터리라는 분은 이곳에 머물게 되었고 또 와이프가 이제 차이니즈예요. 그리고 딸이 하나 있었어요. 3살 된 딸은 이제 팬 아메리칸 호텔인가 거기에서 이제 거기가 홈리스 쉘터로 있게 됩니다. 그래서 거기서 머물고 있다가 저 JFK 케네디 에어포트 그 밑에 아파트를 정부에서 줘가지고 그쪽으로 이제 가정이 가서 살게 되는 경우가 있었습니다. 사실 그런 경우는 매우 드뭅니다. 이제 그런 분들이 하도 많기 때문에. 그리고 또 이곳에 너무너무 필요합니다. 패밀리가 들어가서 쉼을 얻을 수 있고 어려움을 당하고 또 재정적인 어려움이죠. 그런 분들이 이제 그곳에 들어가는 것은 절실하게 필요합니다. 그것은 우리 한인뿐만 아니고 우리 차이니즈 분들도 그렇고 다민족도 아마 그러리라고 제가 생각이 됩니다.
I learned about these 200 families that traveled from Ecuador through our partners at COVID Care Neighbor Network. There was no question that we wanted in some way to support these families. In our own backyards in Jackson Heights, families, many with children, were living in very unstable circumstances.
What I found was that last summer there was this influx of immigrants, all from the Andes Mountains in central Ecuador, and a lot of them had fled central Ecuador for better prospects here in New York, and they were looking just to register their kids in school. And so again, COVID Care, just neighbor helping neighbor, we're able to help. So we started with school registration, but once you start talking to kids about school, we kind of ask, does your child have health insurance? Do you want to learn English? Do you know that the Department of Education offers free English classes? Do you know how to register for them? Do you know about some of your rights with housing? A lot of them didn't know about winter and didn't know they would need winter coats and hats and gloves. So we did basic drives to try to get them the things they would need just to live in New York.
Bueno, creo que el desafío más grande es en buscar un arriendo, ¿no? Es la parte más complicada que pude encontrar, pero sin embargo tuve muchas personas latinos que viven años aquí, me han ayudado de entrada, nunca me lo negaron.
Muchas cosas nos tocó enfrentar económicamente y no conocíamos de ciudad. Bueno, esos desafíos para mí muy grandes y sobresalí de eso, gracias a Dios, y con la ayuda de vecinos.
I will say, in Jackson Heights and many of the families that have come to us for help, it's remarkable how self-sufficient they are. But it is also quite remarkable how there is no safety net for them. And so a rainstorm will completely upend their entire existence and completely destabilize them.
There is this model minority myth, and that oftentimes, especially in our communities, the poverty and the need isn't readily visible. But we see it when folks are coming to our offices asking for that help. Sometimes it's a small business who has come and said, we need the small business, but I also heard you have housing help because they're also housing unstable. It stretches through so many things that is interlinked, and that we see it day in and day out. And we have been so busy dealing with this that sometimes we have to step back and let the world know that there are these people, and we see them. There's thousands that come through our doors every year that need this help. I'd like to welcome Joanne Yu, Executive Director of Asian American Federation, who has been in the front lines of advocating for our community through these challenging times. She's joining us now to talk about what the community experienced in 2021 and also what to look forward to in 2022. Joanne?
Hi, Tom. It's so good to see you. My goodness, we've been doing this for a while now. We've been fighting in the front lines behind the scenes for 2 decades. How are you doing?
Good. And you?
Okay. We've seen better days, but here we are. I remember when we were the junior staff, right? And we're each running our own shop, and all the responsibilities that we have for caring for our community during a really scary time right now. And people, it's just been one hell of a ride, right?
What has the community experienced in the past year, particularly, with the pandemic and in other events, unrelated to the pandemic?
For the past, all I can think about for the past 2 years has been the Asian hate, and it's just been so brutal and so painful. And, all of us, Asian Americans in particular, I think it's just all New York, how we're just so stunned by what we're seeing, and how our community is processing it. I've told many elected officials, media, that we're angry, and we have every right to be angry. And I think we all hold a lot of that in, especially you, me, and Jen. We are leading the charge, and we, the Chinese saying about eating bitterness. That's what we're having to do. We're having to sort of suck it up and hold our breath and keep the work moving forward because we are responsible for our community. The frontline organizations like Affy, I see what you guys do. The food pantry lines, the small businesses that Renaissance cares for, the whole host of things that Affy is leading, and I'm just very, very, very grateful. I'm deeply grateful for your leadership.
Thank you. The Federation does a lot of reports and kind of studies on our community, particularly in the New York region. What does our Asian American Pacific Islander community look like right now in terms of our demographics? What our socio economic statuses are? Have there been a lot of changes in the past few years that you can point to that really determine our strategies and priorities going forward?
I think, the talking points remain the same. We are some of the poorest New Yorkers. When I say that, people are really shocked because I think people think Asians are wealthy. It's the damn model minority myth that always, stymies our community. But, there's a lot of invisible poverty in our community. We're continuing to grow. There is language diversity, there's ethnic diversity. We are spreading throughout the state, not just in New York City. We are a community that is not just in the enclaves, but our research shows that, you know, I think when people think Asian community, they think Sunset Park, China, you know, Manhattan, Chinatown, Flushing, Jackson Heights. But the reality is that we are at least 10% of the population in over half the city council districts.
The Federation was key to advocate for more funding specifically for AAPI-focused organizations and programs. Are there more glimmers of hope like this, you know, moving into the next year?
There's always glimmers of hope. Last year, you know, Governor Hochul committed $10 million. That's going out to the communities. This year, we're going to be bold. We need to be. We can't just sit by and say we're going to be really passive. This is what has gotten us to here, right? We have a really strong Pan-Asian community. We're standing up together. So we're saying this year we're going to ask for a cool $64.5 million. And so I hope that this fight isn't just the fight of the advocates like you, like me, but this is a fight for the entire community, because ultimately what these resources means is that the help will get to the community level. We need to think about support for small businesses. We need to think about social services, seniors, youth programming. We need to fight for so many of the needs in our community that can help the most vulnerable in our community, but also to help working class, middle class. We need the visibility, but we also need programs in place in order for us to thrive.
What might be a solution or practical program reform that would benefit the Asian American and Pacific Islander community?
The one critical need right now I see is around mental health. And I think, you know, we've always had stigma around mental health. You know, we don't talk about it. It's some shameful family thing. And I think this moment, with all the anti-Asian hate we're seeing, we're all feeling tremendous anxiety. And I think I've told you in our private conversations, you know, every other day I'm telling you how anxious I am about getting on the subway, anxious I am about going outside. We've shared stories. I think we're all feeling a lot of anxiety, and we're feeling a lot of anger, and we need to be able to talk to professionals about how we're feeling. So right now we need to be able to get resources to, clinical social workers, faith leaders. These conversations need to happen in every corner in our city, so we can process our feelings, to talk about what we're experiencing, and to be able to deal with our trauma, deal with our pain and our anguish, so that way we can move forward together. I think right now for me, that is the number one concern in our community, that we are all on the breaking point.
Well, thank you, Joanne, and your staff at the Asian American Federation for all that you do and continue to do for our community. A heartfelt thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for all the work that you guys are doing. My love to the Affy family. I lived there for almost 10 years. So I'm really excited to participate and to see all the great work that you're doing. And I'm eternally grateful to all your leadership as well.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up tonight, one more chance to support Affy's work and to really join us in doing our part in building community safety in 2022. It's easy to do. Just send a text with AAFE in the subject line to 44321 or scan the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Also, we invite you to visit our event website, affygala.org, to see special Lunar New Year greetings from our elected officials and to see a complete list of tonight's sponsors.
Thanks again for joining us tonight. Your friendship and commitment to our communities mean the world to us and to the thousands of immigrant New Yorkers Affy serves every year. Good night, everyone, and stay safe.